Yo, what up YouTube? Crash Wilcox, and I got another build video for you guys. This time I'm pretty excited about it. I don't get to too many all white builds, but that's what we're going to be going here. As you can see from the title, I think I'm going to go with like Snowblind, something like that, something corny. So that's what it's going to be. But before we go into that, I'm going to touch on something that's probably going to burn a lot of bridges, but I'm just going to give my little take on the world, because I had someone on Facebook recently, and I'm sure most of you have had this same thing, that silence is consent. So if you don't say anything, you're whatever, you're part of the problem. So in that vein, I'm going to give my take on the world one time forever, and then we're going to press into the normal build video and we'll lay all that out. So go ahead, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Do it now before I ruin our relationship forever, and then we'll get into the rest of this. So, the world's crazy right now, and I don't have a big platform, but I have a platform. So I agree with them. Silence is consent. So I want to just make my opinions known and let the chips fall where they may, I suppose. If I burn bridges with some of you, I apologize. Hopefully that's not the case, and hopefully we can bond over our love of tech and all things computers. But anyways, so the world's on fire, obviously, and the case that I want to make, that I've made to personal friends of mine, is this whole, the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm on two different sides with that. I'm a First Amendment absolutist. If you want to go and protest, I stand behind it, even if I don't agree with it. You have every right. I'm not going to get in your way. But as far as the meat of the Black Lives Matter movement, I don't necessarily agree with. And I don't want to divide people and come out like a hater or anything like that. But I disagree with the idea of systemic racism in America. I do not believe that exists in America. And I think in order for you to say that there's a systemic racism problem, you'd have to show me law. You'd have to show me on books where racism is endorsed legally. And I don't think that you're going to find that in America. And I don't think America's a racist country. I think we have racists, but we don't have a racism problem. I believe racism is essentially dead in America, outside of the people that you can see are racist. And unfortunately, I think a lot of those people reside in our mainstream media. You see them on the news, burning cities to the ground. I think the old stereotype of a old white guy with a hood and a cloak on, riding around, burning crosses, I don't think that exists in America anymore. And I think the thing that we call systemic racism in America, I think can be better defined by a different term, and that's liberalism. And I think liberalism is a problem in America, not racism. And the reason I say that, and they look alike, and I think you could probably make the argument they are similar, but it's liberalism in America that supports the abortion industry and even promotes the abortion industry, which negatively affects minority communities, especially African Americans. So that's not racism, that's liberalism. It's liberalism in America that has trashed and destroyed the traditional family in America. And study after study shows that the number one indicator of success in a person's life is if they come from a home with a mother and a father in it. A stable, traditional home. And liberalism has trashed that, not racism. It's liberalism that promotes poverty through dependence on government, rather than success based on independence. That's not racism, that's liberalism. It's liberalism that has sought to remove God from this country. And when you remove God from the country, you remove morality from the country. And we're witnessing the side effects of a country without God and without morals. And I think most people watching this and around the world would agree this is not a place we want to be. So we can call it systemic racism, but I think that's misguided. I think it's known by a better term, liberalism. And what I find very frustrating is we hate racism and we denounce racism, all the while voting for liberalism. And I think until we can get that under control, I don't think we're going to solve this issue, because, it's the liberalism in these large cities that emboldens these police forces. And, it's law after law after law piled on top of centuries of law that become oppressive. This is supposed to be the land of the free. We have a Bill of Rights. We're a country of individuals. We're not a country, like China, where, the state is everything. Here, America, the individual is everything. You are everything. You're supposed to be a country unto yourself, essentially. But we've lost that, and that's our fault. We've let that go. It sounds cheesy, to go out and be like, I love black people, but like, not a racist bone in my body. I support everybody's right to protest, again, whether I agree with it or not. And I understand that, African Americans especially, they feel mistreated in this country, and, the police system and also, the judicial system in this country definitely needs a hard look and some drastic changes. I agree on that. Our police units shouldn't be military units, in my opinion. But again, that's a bigger problem, and I'm afraid that we're focused so much on fixing a symptom, police brutality, rather than the actual cause of that symptom, liberalism. So again, that's my take. I want to see the country healed. I want to see, God put back onto his pedestal where he belongs, the traditional family supported. That doesn't mean that I hate anybody and I want, gays and lesbians and minorities to be, harassed. I don't. I want you to live the best life you can, however you want to live it. If you don't infringe on my rights, I don't infringe on yours. That's the way America's supposed to be. But we've lost that along the way. It's if you don't believe like I believe, exactly like I believe, then you're my enemy and I have to destroy you. And that's destroying us as a nation. So, I think that's my take. I hope I don't burn any bridges. I'm happy. I'm not going to probably answer a lot of comments on this one unless they're, thoughtful comments. But, I probably didn't explain this as best I could. So if there's anything that sounds like, I speaking down about something or I didn't fully expound on something like I should have, please, I apologize. And the one last thing I wanted to touch on that I kind of forgot to mention is this topic of white privilege in America. Obviously, I'm a white guy, but I don't necessarily believe in white privilege in America. I think it's funny when we have like the Me Too movement and we get told that and especially in like the abortion industry and all that, men don't get a say because, they're not women. And then we hear about Black Lives Matter and, white people don't get a say because they're not African American. All the while, women and minorities get to tell us how we feel and think. So it's kind of like, and the problem is the media is pitting us against each other. I remember hearing that in the 90s, where I grew up as a teen, it was a colorblind generation. We were the first generation in America that didn't see color anymore. But then here we are. They had to drag us back into it. So I don't believe in white privilege. I believe in privilege. Some people have it and some people don't. In my mind, LeBron James is just as privileged and has been his entire life as Donald Trump. They were both gifted upon birth with, a privileged life, and God bless them. I don't hate anybody for their privilege. It's upsetting that I don't have that, but I don't think it's a white, black, Hispanic, male, female issue. It's a privilege issue. And again, I think some people have it, some people don't. You may have more of it in the white community just because of history. You know, they've been the predominant race in this country, in the Western world. But I think America has done a very good job in moving past that. You know, I think also America tends to trend in the right direction. We always get there eventually. So I think we need to kind of push, but be patient. You know, you can't burn the country to the ground because you want change so bad. You have to fight for what you believe in and then trust that America is a good enough country that we're going to get right eventually. I think it was Francis de Tocqueville in his book, Democracy in America, I think back in the 1700s, wrote that America is great because America is good. And I think that truth holds today. So we just need to trust in that truth and have faith that it's going to carry us into the right place eventually. But, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. America wasn't built in a day. So hopefully we can all kind of come together, start singing Kumbaya, and, you know, remember that it's supposed to be us against the politicians, you know, not the politicians pitting us against each other for their own power, which is the way I see it. So, you know, you're not going to get any, I'm standing with Black Lives Matter, you know, headlines on my YouTube page today, because I've always stood with Black people and Hispanic people. I'm not like these yellow-bellied companies, large institutions around the country that feel like they have to remind everybody. You know, I see on like Amazon, we support Black Lives Matter. Like, did you not support Black people before? Why do you have to announce it? Like, I assumed Amazon supported Black people, but I guess not. They had to make it known that now they do. So you're not going to get that here. We always have. We love everybody. That's the golden rule. Treat other people the way you want to be treated. And we believe that here at Crash Wilcox Computers. And I personally want a nice computer. So I'm going to treat you guys with a nice computer. So if there's anybody left after my idiotic ramblings, we are now going to get into the computer. So with that being said, as you can see, I got right here the Corsair Carbide, 275R. That is the case we're going to be building in this time. And it's a nice case, nothing very fancy, just all white. And a little ironic that I'm building this case today when I decided to make the statement. It was not intentional, I promise you. It just happened to work out that way, that we're building an all-white PC today. But it's going to look good. So, Corsair Carbide, nothing fancy. But with that, we're going to kind of go through the standard way of kind of breaking out all the parts, why I chose what I chose. And then we're going to move into the unboxing portion. We'll get into the benchmarks, and then we'll come back with the final build. And if you want to see the full build guide of me stumbling through building another computer, that's going to be on the Patreon page. Please, you know, go and support me. $2 a month. Obviously, YouTube is and Facebook are not going to look highly on supporting this video. So I could certainly use your guys' support in this. Please share it with somebody if you care to, or just support the channel directly. I would love it. So with that being said, we're going to get into these parts. So like I always say, every time I build a computer, the CPU is, in my opinion, the most important part of any computer. Whether you're building a workstation or a gaming PC or a home office PC or whatever, a VR computer, I don't care what it is. CPU is where I think you have to start your focus. So for that, we went with, yet again, an i7-10700K. So if you watched my last video, we just built an i7-10700K computer, and that'll be linked up here. You can go check that out. That's our Asus Tough Gaming 10th Gen Intel build. And the reason I went with this, originally I had the intention of going with like an i7 and an i9, maybe an i5, whatever. But the i5s were so delayed in coming out, and the i9s were sold out. So it just came down to availability, and the i7s were around, so I went with another i7. And like I talked about in the Asus Tough Gaming build video, I think it's a 9900K refresh, and a lot of the reviewers talked about this CPU being a CPU without a home, but largely I think a 10-core i9 is a CPU without a home. Like, if you're going to go high core count, go high core count, because AMD's got you beat, I mean, in a big way with the Ryzen 9 series. And if you're going to go gaming, just pure gaming, I mean, you can go with an i5 or a Ryzen 5 and get great gaming results out of those. But I think the 8-core CPUs is that sweet spot of, like, high gaming capabilities, but also good enough for your, mid-level, entry-level content creators. You'll be able to run for a couple years on an 8-core, 16-thread CPU. So it's great. It's going to run great. Not much else to say about that. And then, what do you want to touch on? We'll go with this. So the idea for this computer was really built around this beautiful motherboard. So right here we have the Gigabyte Z490 Vision G. And this thing is absolutely gorgeous. It's hard to find a white motherboard nowadays. Really, the last person to make one that I can remember was NZXT. And I don't think they've made a Z490 set of motherboards yet. So this was about as close to matching the white theme as we could find. And it's an awesome motherboard. It's kind of built in that creator mindset. And because it even says creator on here, so that's how you know. But a lovely motherboard. You guys will see it when we get to the unboxing. But, just Gigabyte's great. You don't usually get a dud out of Gigabyte, so not too worried about that there. Let's see. We'll get the uncool stuff out of the way. So for the power supply, went with the Cooler Master 750 watt bronze. And I talked about this in my last video, I believe. Power supplies have been incredibly hard to come by. So I had purchased that from Cooler Master, just like I did for the Asus computer. They had power supplies that were reasonably high wattage. You can find a bunch of 450 watt power supplies that are non-modular, but to actually find a good high enough wattage semi-modular, they were tricky. So got that on Cooler Master, and it should work out just fine. 750 watts is plenty of power for this computer. And then we will go with, for the RAM, we're going with Crucial Ballistics DDR4 3600 megahertz. It's white with RGB, so it'll look good in the computer. That's basically the main selling point. 3600 megahertz is plenty fast, and Crucial is a good company. So there you go. Good RAM. And for this, we went with the Gigabyte. I might as well just turn this around so you can see the 2070 Super. And this is the white edition. So again, fitting that theme, looking pretty good in there. The 2070 Super, much like the i7, I think is sort of like, until the 30 series RTX cards come out, that sweet spot of, great performance to reasonable budget, I guess, card is if you can say that. You can certainly get better graphics cards, but you're going to wind up paying a pretty penny for it. And you can get the 5700 XT, as I talked about in the Asus Tough Gaming computer video, is comparable in many respects to the 2070 Super. I don't think the 2070 Super bests it more often than not, but it's not by large margins. But you are getting the RTX or the ray tracing capability with this. So that's just a nice plus. You know, the DLSS 2.0, I believe, has come out, so it's made the ray tracing stuff a little bit nicer. It's not, you know, such a crapshoot like it was when it first came out. So great graphics card. Going to pair with a great CPU, and it's going to be great. So next up, we'll go with the memory or the storage. So just like we did in the Asus TUF Gaming computer, exactly the same here. We're going with the XPG SX8100 for the OS boot drive. And then we are going, and this is a 512 gigabyte, as you can see. And then we're going to go with the XPG GameX S5. And this is a 1 terabyte kind of game drive, backup, media drive, whatever you want to call it. And again, the reason for that, user experience, you're never going to notice the difference if we swap these around and did whatever we did. But on paper, the 8100 is a faster hard drive. So because of that, we're going to use it as the boot drive. So again, no real reason. You would never notice, but I would notice because I'm building it, and it would make me itch all over if I didn't do it the right way. So with that, so the Corsair case comes with 2 fans pre-installed, but they're both black fans, and that doesn't work well in a white build. So for that, we are throwing in 3 Enermax square RGB lights. I believe these are 120 millimeter fans, and they're square RGB. So I'm not sure. When I bought these, they seemed cool, and now that I have them, I don't know if I'm gonna like the square. So we'll see. I'm kind of up the creek here without a paddle, so we're kind of stuck with this, but we'll see how it goes once we get them hooked up. Otherwise, they're nice fans. They look nice, but again, I'm not sure how I'm gonna use them or how I'm gonna like them once I use them. And then almost done here for the CPU cooler. For that, we are using the ID Cooling ZoomFlow 240X. Now it looks black on here, but we actually got the snow edition, the all white edition here. So again, gonna look good. And this is the reason why I'm not too sure about the fans, because these are square fans and these are circle fans. And I don't know how that's gonna look in here, but we're gonna roll the dice anyways and see what comes out. So should be plenty of cooling, 240 millimeter AIO. You know, this wasn't really an intention, but I like it now that we're here. I'm not a big fan of just using, you know, the name brand parts all the time. Like, you know, every white build that you're going to see has like, what is like the Corsair H110 or something like that. And I'm sure it's a great cooler. Obviously, that's probably why people use it, but like, there's more out there, man. So, you know, I never used an ID Cooling AIO before, so we're going to find out together how well this thing works. I'm sure it's going to be fine. ID Cooling is not a nobody. They're a brand. They're just not a big brand yet, but that'll be just fine. And then last thing that we have here, mother of God, is, so I just bought some cable extensions on Amazon. I don't normally use cable extensions, but I don't normally do all white builds. And I just have a hard time swallowing the pill for the amount of money that Cable Mod charges for their cables. So we'll see how these work. If I don't like them, I won't use them. But if they work well, then I'll stick with them. They did come with these black cable clips, which I was originally intending to use, but then the ID Cooling, for whatever reason, I don't know why, came with white cable clips. Don't know why this came with cable clips, but it did. So my original intention is going to be to use the white cable clips on here, But again, if I don't like that, I'll try the black, and if I don't like any of it, I'll get rid of all of it and just stick with the cables that are in the power supply. So that's all the parts. We're going to go ahead and get these things open. I will be doing the benchmarks a little bit differently this time because I have the Asus Tough Gaming computer. So I'll be comparing this against that because that's an i7 10700K with a 5700 XT. This is a 10700K with a 2070 Super. So we'll be juxtaposing those. And then also, just because I have it laying around, I might throw in benchmarks for a Ryzen 9 3900X and a 5700 XT to see sort of where that compares, because that's an equally $400 CPU right now. So it compares well price-wise. You know, core count not really the same, but we'll see how it works out. So that's that. I hope you guys still love me. Let's get into these these box openings.
you.